The Saturday Morning Snap is a one-stop fantasy shop, bringing weekly news and advice in under an hour. I'm Mackenzie Tout, joined by Landon Monula. Welcome to the podcast. We are back, live on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Play Music, or however you may be listening. We want to welcome you into the show. It is Wednesday, November 7th, and this is episode 30 of the Saturday Morning Snap Fantasy Football Podcast, coming to you on a Wednesday, our usual Wednesday episode, joined here by my good friend Landon Monula, the second best DFS player that I know.
You know what? It's like I called it when we were doing it. Next time we do a live one, we'll do it, we'll record it, and I'm going to switch my lineup. Because the one we do live just does not ever work out. I mean, hindsight, I love that pick if you would have went with, that's the thing, Kamara, Hunt, and McCaffrey, that was the winning combo there with two of the value studs in your running back's place and then the stud at your flex. That killed it.
Yeah, I really got lucky with Hunt and McCaffrey. Not lucky. Those were great picks by me. I'm not gonna lie.
Sure.
No, it was fun. You know, I really do enjoy doing the live DFS head-to-head draft. I think it's really fun, and so far it's yielded some good results. I just think, you know, for future episodes, you should just copy my lineup and put one in.
Yeah. All right. Whatever. So how's your week been so far, Mac?
Yeah, not too bad. How about you?
Pretty good. I've had a couple days off, so we actually get to record at a proper time tonight. And I'm actually off Thursday again, so we'll see. Maybe we can sneak out an episode then too.
I like it.
And what we want to talk about is some trade talk, because in most people's leagues, your trade deadline is coming up on November 10th. So
correct.
Hit us up with some possible trades you've been offered. If you want to make moves to win a championship, this is the week to do it. So hit us up on Twitter, Instagram, Sleeper, and we can discuss what we think, what we like, what we would offer. It's a little bit tough because obviously you want to offer certain things, but it's like if you see something on eBay, wow, that pair of sneakers, they're asking like $1,300 for them. Yeah, but are they actually selling them for that much? You can ask whatever the heck you want, but are you getting it done? That's what we'll talk about.
Mm-hmm. Nice that you mentioned social feed. We are on Instagram at Saturday Morning Snap. We're also on Twitter, Landon_SMS and Mac_SMS. You can join our Sleeper community as well. You can just follow the link in the episode description if you're on Apple Podcasts. But yeah, hit us up with some of your trade questions. We're more than happy to give you our feedback, especially heading into your trade deadline. Like Landon said, November 10th at 11:59 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So that's for those of you on the West Coast. For us on the East Coast, it'll be about 2 a.m. So don't leave your trades to the last minute, but you have until Saturday night to finalize those final trades. So yeah, we'll be giving you some buy and some sell targets, players that we think you should get or you should get rid of. But if you have your own questions, you should hit us up on those and we'll answer them come Saturday.
Before the end of the podcast, there's a lot of activity in my big 16-team league. I can hit you up with some questions a little bit later. But for now, we've got some lots of news and notes and injury news this week, Mac.
Yeah, I'm going to start with, fellow Green Bay Packer, Geronimo Allison needs core abdominal surgery. He is placed on IR this afternoon, just after I helped a friend of mine orchestrate a trade that involved Marquez Valdes-Scantling. So the timing of that couldn't have been better. News broke literally about 15 minutes after, so that was awesome. And means really big things for Marquez Valdes-Scantling, rookie receiver for Green Bay Packers. The other notable wide receiver who you probably haven't played him a lot this year, but maybe at times you've been flexing him. Paul Richardson needs shoulder and knee surgery. He's also on IR, out for the rest of the season.
Yeah, those are both the mediocre news of the day. To me, I mean,
we're starting off slow.
That's all right, but that does mean big things for MVS, and he's going to be the number one waiver wire ad this week. Hopefully, you beat the rush and grabbed him last week. I know I wish I did. I grabbed Kiki instead, and that did not do me any good whatsoever. So yeah, does this mean anything for Aaron Rodgers? Not really. He'll get the wide receivers the ball when he needs to.
Did you see MVS on the field last week?
He had a good game. He had a really good game.
Did you see that catch he made in double coverage?
No, I didn't.
Yeah, man, he's so athletic.
He's good,
such a big-bodied guy. Yeah, as soon as that guy gets more targets, it's like you got Devontae Adams 2.0.
Would you also add EQ, Equinemius St. Brown? Would you look to add him, or you think MVS is the guy that gets the major uptick?
No, what I noticed watching the Packers game, it seemed like at times they were subbing the two of them in and out, MVS for EQ, and same thing with Aaron Jones and Jamal Williams. They were subbing them in and out, but there was a heavier share for the MVS Aaron Jones package, if you want to call it, than the duo of Williams and St. Brown. So the way that I see it, they're using MVS and Jones is a pairing when they're on the field and more often. So I see more for those two than I do the other side. But EQ is more of like a special teams guy, a pace of play guy who probably won't be all too relevant right now, but maybe in the future. If you're in a deep keeper league or a dynasty league, you for sure have to have those guys on your team if they're sitting on your waivers for whatever reason.
Yeah. So, big news out of 49ers camp. Nick Mullins has been named starter. He had a great game on Thursday night. Is he a streamer to you? Or what do you think about Nick Mullins, quarterback for 49ers?
Yeah, I think right now, especially going late into your seasons, he's probably a guy I'm staying away from. I'm not going to pick him up on waivers tomorrow morning, or I guess this morning if you're listening. Early in the morning. I'm not going out and getting him. He'll probably still be there, but I might play him.
They play the Giants this week.
Yeah, if I can play him in a good matchup, if I could play him, maybe if someone's on bye and I need to stream somebody, he might be a consideration. But I think at this point, so late in the season, if I'm desperate for wins, I'm going to find more experienced options, guys that have played more than one game in the league. Because like we've seen before, these things can be flashes in the pan. And, when they face some real adversity and teams get tape on a guy, they can game plan against them. Yeah, so I would probably stay away from Mullins.
Who would you stream, Eli Manning or Nick Mullins this Monday?
I probably have to go Mullins.
There you go.
I wouldn't consider. Did you happen to hear about the guy? The fantasy footballers talked about it. A guy in a league tweeted to them. He said, "I started Nick Mullins in a league that I'm in. He's undefeated, 8-0. He started Nick Mullins as a way to troll his opponent, and then ended up getting like 34 off him."
Unbelievable. Sometimes I think we should start doing that, and it'll turn out better than my actual starters in some leagues. That's what it feels like in fantasy football this year, but. Minor insignificant news out of the Lions camp. They released Amir Abdullah.
Woo!
The guy who was picked over David Johnson in the same draft class.
It's just so crazy. Like, that guy never got anything going, and he had so much opportunity. I mean, you've seen what Carrion has done this year coming in. The job was there for the taking. The run game was there to establish, and he just never could. And it's funny, they waived him. Now they're going to lean on Theo Riddick, Kerryon Johnson, LeGarrette Blount to carry the run game forward. But in his leave, they opened up roster space for Bruce Ellington, aging wide receiver. So it's
I
just
guess that
funny
just
that's his
shows
depart.
they traded away Golden Tate, and now they have a blaring need for a wide receiver. So
I
too
don't know
bad
if it's a
for-
blaring need, but there's a space there. I just think in moving Tate, they got some draft capital back, but it also shows how much credibility, how much confidence they have in Marvin Jones and Kenny Golladay. I think that's what it ultimately means. They didn't really need Tate anymore, and it was time to build because Jones and Golladay are quite young.
Yeah, I guess so. I kind of wish that they would have kept Tate because Stafford had the worst game of his career against the Vikings, and I was playing. I started Stafford, and it was did not work out for me most leagues.
Yeah, well, I started Kirk Cousins in about 3 leagues, and
Just a bad game for quarterbacks.
yeah, pretty brutal. In some opposite news of young wide receivers, we have 2 aging wide receivers that are currently working out with the New Orleans Saints, Des Bryant and Brandon Marshall. Now, I just saw on my Sleeper app, it's about 10 o'clock here, Eastern Standard Time. Sleeper notification just dropped that Des Bryant and the New Orleans Saints were close to inking a deal. So I wouldn't be surprised if Des Bryant signs with the Saints tonight or early into tomorrow morning.
Well, it's weird. I have a contradicting report that Des left without a contract.
Oh,
Yeah, but so maybe they're still negotiating. It's all over. If you go on the Score, the NFL homepage, that they're negotiating a deal with Des Bryant. So there's conflicting reports, but he's worth, like you have on here, he's worth a small bid in keeper or in Fab waiver wire bids, but that was poorly said. But I get what you're saying. So you basically you'd put a claim in for Des if you had a burner spot.
yes, I would. Like an absolute burner.
Yeah. It would have to be pretty bad. Yeah, I feel you.
Sony Michel plans to return for Week 10.
Good news.
What is your rest of season adjustment on him? Where does he fall?
He's a running back too. James White has been so good that I don't know if I think they're gonna probably err on the side of caution with Sony. He showed flashes. He's a good running back. And if he gets the full workload, he's a running back 1, especially if that offense continues to be dominant like they are. But rest of the season, I'm not too excited about him. I just think it's gonna be okay. They're gonna keep using other guys in that offense.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think I see him as like a running back 2/3. I don't think he was trending towards potentially being an RB1, like a fringe RB1, but I don't see that upside anymore with the success that James White has had currently, and just the Patriots don't really need to use him at this point in the capacity that he probably needs to be used for good fantasy production.
Yeah. That's basically it. I agree.
The headliner on the news and notes for this week is a tweet coming from Steelers running back Le'Veon Bell that says, "Farewell, Miami," as if he's saying goodbye. He's been working out in southern Florida for the offseason, and the tweet sort of suggests that Lev Bell's on his way out to somewhere else, and that place can only be one place, and it's Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. So, Lando, does he come back this week to play? Probably not, seeing as the Steelers play Thursday night.
Yeah, it's funny. As soon as we talked about him in at length last week, and I thought I was going to eat my words. But I don't think I am. Not quite yet. He's not going to play this week. Like you said, they play on Thursday, and I think he was spotted playing pickup basketball at an LA Fitness.
Interesting.
Not sure what that means. At first I thought it was in LA, but it was just at a gym. I'm not sure where that gym actually was, whether it was in Pittsburgh or what. But enjoy you have James Conner this week. We will see what happens next. At this point, I don't know. I don't really think anything's changed that he's tweeted out. He hasn't reported to Pittsburgh camp at all. Wait till he actually reports, and then we have an actual news story. I don't think this tweet, this misspelled tweet, really, really says anything quite yet.
Yeah, I'm with you. Until Le'Veon Bell steps foot in the building, I'm not paying too much attention to it. All I know is that we get another week of James Conner, which is fantastic for fantasy owners for him. Am I moving James Conner? I don't think that I could right now because if your prediction for Le'Veon Bell's situation is true and he comes back but doesn't necessarily play, or if he doesn't come back at all, right? James Conner could still be amazing. I mean, he's a championship winning piece, so I don't think you can trade him right now. I think it's too big of a story for that to fly under the radar. It's too risky for somebody else to want to do a deal with you. So I would probably stay away from moving him just on the upside that he does continue to play. I mean, he's a running back one that could win you a championship. So.
And I don't have James Conner anywhere. Whoever does got him at a crazy good discount off the waiver wire or late in drafts. I think it'd be pretty hilarious if come like playoff week one, and you're playing James Conner and he's out and Lev Bell is in.
Don't do that.
I don't know. I don't have James Conner anywhere, and I just feel like those teams got an almost unfair advantage being that lucky. But I mean, I can't be bitter about it. It's fantasy football. You took a risk in taking James Conner. Granted, it wasn't a big risk, but yeah, I don't know. It's just kind of more luck than anything.
The same thing happened last year with Alvin Kamara, you know?
Yeah, that's but I guess so. But
I picked up Alvin Kamara off a waiver wire in our league.
Yeah, and that was lucky, but at least I guess. It'd be one thing if Ingram went out and got suspended for the whole season and then you got to pick him up. It'd be, I don't know. I guess you're right.
It happens, from time to time.
Yeah, true.
Yeah. So anyways, we'll continue to monitor the Le'Veon Bell situation. Like I said, he could report week 10. Go to last week's podcast and listen to Landon talk about his situation and what it means financially. Too much of it to get into it again now, but does he come back? We don't know. Until he steps foot in the building and actually reports, I don't think there's much of a story, but what we do know for now is we get James Conner for another week, at least on Thursday, and we'll kind of go from there.
Yep.
Oh, what's this? A coming out party?
Yep. Okay, studs and duds of this week. Players who had great games. Where do you want to start? I think the answer is pretty obvious.
Let's start with the studs. And Michael Thomas, 211 yards and a touchdown. He already had a good game going before that big 70-yard reception for a touchdown. Or 50 or 70, I don't know what it was. Either way, it won people weeks. Yep. And what a game that was. That lived up to every expectation.
Yeah, I mean, so it's funny for me. I have Michael Thomas in 2 leagues, and in 2 matchups I was playing against Michael Thomas. And so Michael Thomas in 1 league, which I was I was supposed to lose. The original projection had me losing by about 30 points at the beginning of the week to, I think, the first place team. And then after the 1:00 game, so about 4:00 on Sunday, I checked again and I was projected to lose by 45. So I'm just like, what is going on, man? Well, doesn't Michael Thomas go out in, this is a PPR league, grab me 33.9 points?
Yeah.
Just ridiculous. Closes that gap so much. And then I'm only down 10 going into the night game. And I have Cowboys D and Derrick Henry against Cole Beasley.
Wow. Okay.
and we pulled it out.
That's close. Yeah. If Henry didn't have that touchdown, it would have been real tight.
So you saw what I had. You saw the tweet that I put out.
Yeah. Oh, I love that.
I was like, I need 4 points from Derrick Henry. This was another matchup. I need 4 points out of Derrick Henry to get this much needed W. And I'm like, why did I do this to myself? Doesn't he have the most Derrick Henry game of all time? 6 carries for 27 yards and 1 ridiculously poor touchdown. He barely broke the plane, and when he did, I was stoked.
He just vultured that off Dion Lewis.
Yeah. But the funniest thing, so Michael Thomas, it actually ended out that his game didn't affect me in that one matchup because I came back to somehow beat the number 1 team in this league and finally get to a winning record of 5-4 after starting the year 1-4. This is the auto draft league that you and I are co-managing.
Right.
But then in a couple places he totally won me matchups. Came out of the blue and was an instrumental piece in getting me that win. So it was nice to see it from Michael Thomas. And again, I don't mean to toot my own horn, Orlando, but I did take Michael Thomas last week in DraftKings.
Yes, you did. I like that. Good call. And at the end of that podcast, it's funny. I listened to it again today, and right at the end, I said, hey, you know what? If you like studs like Michael Thomas, Kareem Hunt, and I said Alex Smith in there too, set a bunch of lineups with those guys in it and mix the rest of the Flyers around. And if you would have actually done that and listened to me, you probably would have had some serious cash.
Big money.
Speaking in the Tennessee backfield, Dion Lewis he's not in our stud segment, but I do want to talk about him briefly. He's had a couple really good games. 21.5 fantasy points and 22.5 fantasy points. I believe this is a PPR league. So 13 attempts for 91 yards and 19 attempts for 62 yards last night against Dallas. What are your thoughts on him going forward? Do you see him as a fringe running back too, or they're just gonna?
Oh, he ain't no fringe running back too. He's bordering on a high end running back 2, maybe a fringe 1.
Okay.
I mean, it is clear as day that there is not a lot of space left for Derrick Henry. Like, we talked about this at length during the offseason, and my thing was, if Derrick Henry was truly the guy for the Tennessee Titans, they wouldn't have spent the money to go out and get Dion Lewis. I mean, for verbatim, those were my words, right?
Yep.
And that has come true week in and week out for the whole season so far. So the way that I see Dion Lewis used in the passing game, in the running game, he is so involved in outsnapping Derrick Henry tenfold. I just don't think there's any space for Henry to do anything. He hasn't looked good in one game. And sadly enough, he got me 10.2 points last night. That was his second best fantasy outage on the year because he got the touchdown. The guy was 6 for 27, man. Dion Lewis is the run game. Derrick Henry just, to me, doesn't even exist.
Yeah. Okay, good. I kind of wanted your opinion on that, and you answered that.
Derek, just because you won me a week does not get you in my good books. You are still a scrub, bro.
All right, we'll head to another stud of the week, but not the stud anyone saw coming. Adam Humphries on the back of that big Fitzmagic game. Yep. 8 receptions, 82 yards, and 2 touchdowns. That's what puts him over the top for top finish of the week. Is Adam Humphries an ad in any of your leagues?
Absolutely not. No.
What?
Yep. No, I'm going to talk about the effects of Adam Humphries in my buy and sell segment here. Newsflash, Adam Humphries is not in the sell segment because you shouldn't have him in the first place.
Right.
But, maybe a guy on his team is a potential buy target, and I'll tell you why in about 15 to 20 minutes.
Yep. So the rest of the studs are pretty typical. You've got DeAndre Hopkins, Julio Jones finally had a
Got that
touchdown,
TD.
Mac. Oh,
Did
yeah.
you see how excited the Falcons were for
Man.
potentially the best wide receiver in the league,
I don't
yardage
care.
wise, to get that touchdown?
I don't care who was in between Julio and that end zone. Nobody was stopping him. It could have been Urlacher in his prime, and Julio would have ran truck over him and got into that end zone. I think he was that desperate for a touchdown.
The guy's like on pace for almost 2,000 receiving yards. Like at some point, you just got to get into the end zone. It's just a matter of time.
And it wasn't a red zone touchdown.
No.
He's still those numbers are going to be glaring in the offseason.
That's why he got in, because it wasn't a red zone look.
Yeah. Josh Gordon had a great game, had a long touchdown from Tom Brady. That was kind of just, it was, he got off a tackle, he shed that tackle, and kind of just, it was wide open from the Green Bay Packers from there on. Alvin Kamara, Kareem Hunt, Christian McCaffrey, some interesting ones. Tevin Coleman and Duke Johnson Jr. both had good games. Do you think those are trends, or are they kind of just a flash in the pan?
Coleman, I buy into a little bit more. Duke Johnson Jr., no, I don't. I mean, Nick Chubb had himself a good game as well. So Duke just was his fantasy output was the product of a couple big plays.
Right.
But yeah, no, I look more into Coleman as a potential trend. Duke Johnson was just a fluke. That's the best way to put it.
Cool. So Ito Smith might be a drop, or
no?
We're stashing.
He's a hold. He's a hold.
Yeah, still stash.
If something happens to Coleman, he's the next guy up. So going into the playoffs, I mean, you don't trade him, you hold him.
At this point, if you're looking for a good playoff push, you should look at maybe handcuffing your running backs. If you're a Gurley owner, you got to have the backup running back.
Good call.
Psst, take a seat, pal.
So some duds of the week, some poor performers, particularly are Mike Evans, 1 reception for 16 yards. On the other end of that Humphreys big game.
Mm-hmm.
Adrian Peterson with 9 attempts, only 17 yards. That's not very good. Tariq Cohen, 6 attempts, 5 yards. Wow, that's a shocker.
Yeah, you know what? In this matchup, I really expected more out of Tariq Cohen. I mean, I'll give them this. The Bears defense scored twice, so that totally changes the momentum of the offensive side for Chicago. But the game script was great, and it totally lended itself to the run game. They got up early. They didn't need to throw the ball. So Tariq Cohen should have been involved heavily. And, 1 reception for 8 yards, that's totally not Tariq Cohen's game. So I expect that to be an anomaly. It should not happen again with how good he's been. But, just kind of a weird game.
And you're on Adrian Peterson. You've been thrilled with the quantity of attempts he's been getting. He had 24 2 weeks ago, 26 against the Giants October 28th, and only 9 for 17. And that's just
against a defense that has not been good. Like the Falcons have been terrible, and yet they come out and they just torch the Redskins.
And now he plays Tampa Bay next. But are you confident that you can start Adrian Peterson, or are you going to bench him? Then he's going to go off on your bench.
We're going to talk about Adrian Peterson.
All right. We got Jared Cook, your least favorite tight end of all time.
Yeah, 2 receptions for 20 yards. That's probably good enough for like a tight end 12 on the week.
Yeah, exactly. And then Lamar Miller to round out these old guys that just can't get it done anymore. We said, he was an auto start. He's been playing really well. 12 attempts, 21 yards, and just another a weird game. You got to keep on rolling out Lamar Miller, right?
Absolutely, yeah. Don't shy away from Lamar on just a bad game. He does do this from time to time, disappears, gets games scripted out. I wouldn't look into it too much. Houston's rolling right now.
Yeah, they're on bye this week, so he'll have some time to rest, and then
Yeah.
some decent matchups coming up. So you should be good long term if you're rolling out Lamar Miller.
Agreed.
You got to buy them while they're cheap, man.
All right, let's jump into some guys that potentially that you could buy, guys that are worth acquiring in a trade before the trade deadline's up this Saturday. So there's a couple guys here that I have that I want to talk about. Lando, why don't you pick one of these guys and speak about them first, and I'll kind of follow up with whoever else you want to go with.
Interesting. All right. I like your list here. I'm going to save some of the Green Bay Packers for yourself.
You're so kind.
My trade targets, I think, would be Marvin Jones Jr. and Kenny Golladay. I like both of those guys, both high upside, good players, and I'm really excited for Kenny Golladay. I was on him early in the offseason. Even with a kind of a muddled receiving core with Golden Tate there, you really liked Marvin Jones, and we see Marvin Jones keep getting it done in tough matchups, even against the Vikings this week. He had a decent game. The Vikings last year, he had a really good game, and I think Stafford is a fringe quarterback. He's not great, but he's going to get these guys the ball, and they'll figure it out. It was a tough week without Golden Tate. Their schedule is not the greatest, but long term, I'm not really saying anything that's surprising to you. But they're both very safe guys. I think they're fringe wide receiver 2s right now. They could be a really steady guy for you come playoff time.
Yeah, I think if you are looking around the fantasy network right now, you're probably seeing a lot of reports that are saying get rid of Kenny Golladay, get rid of Marvin Jones. People are looking at this last week's game as potentially what's to come for the Lions offense. They maybe see Golden Tate, the absence of him, leaving a huge hole that can't be filled by two guys, and I say shenanigans to that. This game was a really weird game for Detroit. Vikings defense looked a lot better than they have, but Matt Stafford, traditionally a gunslinger, top 5 in yardage last year. This was the first time in 16 games that he had not thrown at least one touchdown. So just a really off game for Stafford. The other narrative is that they want to get Kerryon Johnson the ball more. They want to feature him. Theo Riddick's still there. Until he goes away, that's not going to happen. So the passing game in Detroit is still very much so the focal point until it becomes less of a committee, because you've still got Theo Riddick and LeGarrette Blount to share the ball with. So, it's not going to be that Todd Gurley like Le'Veon Bell like takeover where the offense just goes through the running back. That's not certainly the case in Detroit. Matthew Stafford is a gunslinger. He's going to continue to throw the ball, and these guys, Marvin Jones Jr. and Kenny Golladay, are seeing about 25% of the target share each. So the workload is essentially still very much there. And I would actually go on the opposite end, because I could get either of those guys, I think, at a discount right now before they start to boom again.
Yeah, I think you're right. The game script, the Chicago games are the only thing that worry me a little bit. The rest should be really good game scripts, lots of throwing the ball, and but overall we'll see. And I think you have a great point. I think they're both decent trade targets. They're not any targets that make you feel really warm and fuzzy inside, but they're going to be okay.
I'm going to talk briefly about 2 Green Bay Packers players that I think you need to get on your team before Week 10 is up. Aaron Jones is number 1. Okay, and for those of you that are new to the podcast, My name's Mackenzie Tout, and I am a Green Bay Packers fan. So, take that with a grain of salt. But here's what you need to know about Aaron Jones and Marquez Valdes-Scantling. I'll start with Aaron Jones. If you look at Aaron Jones after the Packers bye week and in the departure of Ty Montgomery, his opportunity has skyrocketed. Okay? And why I'm so excited for him, snap share. Okay? He's gone from before the bye, he was looking at 25 snaps a game. After the bye, he's now looking at about 39.6 snaps. So he's gotten an extra 15 snaps per game since the bye in week 7. So weeks 8 and 9, huge uptick in snaps. He's had double the amount of targets in the passing game, and he's increased his rushes, his attempts per game, from 8 to 13, so an extra 5. What's happened to Jamal Williams? The opposite. Weeks 3 to 6, he's seeing 7 rushes per game, 2.5 targets, 31 total snaps. He's now only seeing 5.5 rushes, 1.5 targets, and 26 snaps. So he is decreasing across the board, whereas Aaron Jones is increasing. So if this trend continues, Aaron Jones looks fantastic. Jones also leads all running backs with a minimum of 100 carries, with an average of 5.74 yards per carry since the beginning of last season. He's on the come up. You need to get him now. He could be a huge part of a championship winning team if you can get Aaron Jones for cheap.
Yeah, I've got one trade involving Aaron Jones, and I'm hesitant to make the call, pull the trigger. But I get what you're saying, and I think you're right. I think he could be a league-winning running back. It's just there's always been so much confusion in that Green Bay backfield. I get that Ty Montgomery's gone, but I'm pretty sure Jamal Williams vultured a touchdown off Aaron Jones this past week, and he seems to keep doing that, and that's good for kind of depressing Aaron Jones's value, because you want to think that that's just going to keep happening, right? So, it's bound. The tides are bound to turn in his favor if he keeps playing as well as he is. So
yeah, you watch Aaron Jones, you see his opportunity increasing. I just think it means more of him, less of Jamal Williams. But I want to talk about Marquez Valdes-Scantling, MVS, rookie wide receiver for the Green Bay Packers. He did it again last week in the absence of Geronimo Allison. 6 targets, 3 receptions, 101 yards. Has the potential to make the big play. He is a big-bodied man, very, very skilled. He's 6'4", 206 pounds. For me, I don't need a whole lot of data on this guy to know that he's going to be something special. He just passes the eye test. I watch more Green Bay Packers games than anybody, and I can tell you now that just watching him, he's got like the it factor. And now with Geronimo Allison being out for the rest of the season, needing core abdominal surgery, MVS is the guy. Go out and get MVS. Okay, I just helped my buddy orchestrate a trade today that basically he was like, should I get Allen Robinson? And I said, who else does this guy have? And he said, he's got Cooper, who he'd be willing to give up. He's got Marquez Valdes-Scantling. I said, man, Valdes-Scantling over A-Rob and Cooper, book it. And he's like, are you serious? I said, yes, do it. I think that's a great move. The guy was so willing to give this guy up, let alone does he know that he just gave up a potential talent like a Tyler Boyd kind of guy. Like, that's the impact that I think Marquez Valdes-Scantling could have moving forward. He plays in a great offense with Aaron Rodgers, is highly skilled, big-bodied guy, very capable. I really, really like the outlook for MVS, and now's the time to get him.
Cool. Yeah, I like it. He's probably available on a lot of waivers this week. Spend up if you have the chance, especially if you're in a spot where you're not really making a playoff run and you need keeper options. Hey, spend as much as you have on MVS, according to Mr. Tout.
That is me.
So the last guy, I don't know if he's a trade target to me.
Really?
No, I don't. He doesn't give me the warm and fuzzies like I was talking about. And he had a bad week last week, and you're gonna have to convince me on him a little bit. And you have Mike Evans as a trade target. So
I do.
I get that he's had a pretty good season, but to me, it's been fairly surprising. I didn't have him having such a good season in the preseason, and I think like the past few weeks, he's kind of proved me right. So you have to convince me here why Mike Evans is a trade target.
Mike Evans so far this year has played in 7 games. He's been a wide receiver 1, 3 of those weeks, wide receiver 2 the other 2 weeks, and then wide receiver 4 weeks 4 and 6. Okay, so has more wide receiver 1 and 2 finishes than he does bust games. So it's fairly consistent. Had a dud game last week. And, you know, it is what it is.
So equal. He's had 3 dud games and 3 boom games.
Sure. Yes. And then his other 2 have been wide receiver 2 finishes.
Right. 13 and 10 points.
Correct. So here's what I say to Mike Evans. Adam Humphrey stole the show, and it's perfect timing because he cast a shadow on Mike Evans, and maybe people are saying, oh, you know, Jameis Winston is gone, Fitzpatrick is back, maybe they're afraid of that because they know what's possible. I say, when you look at Mike Evans, he's been better with Ryan Fitzpatrick than with Jameis Winston, right? So I think, 1, Fitzpatrick coming back is a good thing for Mike Evans. 2, he just had the worst week of his entire season. 1 catch for 16 yards. Now, the opposite side of that is he had 10 targets. 10 targets, 1 reception. Okay? They just didn't hook up last week in a game where Tampa, I think they were lucky to score 28 points, to be honest with you. I think Carolina should have crushed them even more than they did. So, it just seems like when Fitzpatrick gets down by 3 or 4 scores, he just kind of turns it on, and that's when things start to happen. But here's the data on Mike Evans. So far this year, he is 10th in fantasy points per game among wide receivers, 12th in total fantasy points, 5th in receiving yards, 4th in air yards, and 15th in TDs. So he hasn't been scoring as often with touchdowns. He only has 4 on the season, but he's only in 15th for wide receivers. So, you know, as bad as you think he's been, and that's maybe the perception that most fantasy players will have, oh, Mike Evans hasn't been great, I might want to trade him. He has been pretty good. He's been actually pretty great. You know, not league winning great, but he'd be part of a championship winning team if you could get him. So that's why I think Mike Evans is good, because now is the perfect timing after a really bad week and a change at quarterback.
Yeah, their schedule is okay. They have Washington this week, and then New York Giants, which is a great matchup. San Francisco, another good matchup. They play Carolina again, and then New Orleans, who their defense played actually pretty well against the Rams.
And that was going to be my last point for Mike Evans. His schedule lends to a good playoff push.
Yeah, it does, and I don't mind it. He's still a stud. He's still a wide receiver 1 in my eyes. I just those are some pretty good points, Mac. I'll think about that Mike Evans, but I don't know how much I'm willing to pay for him at this point. If I'm looking for a championship, I'm going after teams. Well, yeah, I don't know. It's hard to say. Yeah. Anyways.
Expose him! Expose him!
Let's move on to your sell candidates, Max. So, let's see. I'm going to talk on the first guy that I feel like I want to sell.
Sure.
And it's the guy I own. We've talked about him quite a bit, and that is Jordan Howard.
You have hit me up with so many trade offers this week among a couple other people, but I'm just constantly my message feed getting screenshots. Yo, should I trade this guy for this guy?
And the
50% of trades so far this week have involved Jordan Howard,
I know. And that's
running
great.
back
That's
for the
great
Chicago Bears.
that your friends and family and Twitter and all that is asking about Jordan Howard, because I have those same questions. And this is a guy that I've wanted to sell for quite a while, but you couldn't because he had a string of poor games. Finally, the last 2 weeks, he put up really great numbers. He had 2 touchdowns last week and 14 attempts. And that's kind of all you need to show people, because those 47 yards, well, forget about it. Don't matter, because he had two touchdowns.
Mm-hmm.
And that is why you can finally sell him for a decent buck right now. That's what I want. The week before, he had 22 attempts, which is even better. So his schedule is fine. Everything is fine. I'm just really scared of Jordan Howard, and he's a guy I want to sell absolutely everywhere I can. And if you can't sell him, if you trade for him, I think he's going to be fine. But get a guy with upside on a better offense, on an offense that just seems to make more sense to me. This Chicago offense is all over the map. Trubisky is having actually a really great fantasy year, but he's not getting it into his playmakers' hands unless your name is Tariq Cohen every other week. Allen Robinson's having a terrible season, and Jordan Howard's has been a big letdown. I thought he was going to be a really steady guy in this new offense, but it's just not working out that way. So, do you have any more reasons why Jordan Howard is a sell in your eyes?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at him the last 3 weeks, he's scored 4 touchdowns, right? His fantasy production right now is based on touchdown dependency. And if the guy that you're trading this with doesn't understand that or doesn't acknowledge that fact, and he just looks at the fantasy output, that's really good for you, because he is so unbelievably touchdown dependent right now. If you take away his touchdowns, which it's not a good argument, but here, just to put it into context, if you take away in a half-point league his touchdowns, his workload equates to no more than 8 fantasy points per game over the last 3 games without his touchdowns, right? In standard league, that's barely 5. So I think because of Tariq Cohen and the offense wanting to pass a little bit more, his workload, Jordan Howard's workload, has just simply vanished.
And he doesn't look great on the eye test.
No, he doesn't. So I'm with you. Like, the recency of the touchdowns, 4 in 3 weeks, now's the perfect time to sell, because it looks like he's trending towards something better. But I think this might be a good time to drop a landmine on another team with Jordan Howard.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense to me. He's overachieving. Sell him high.
Yeah. Another guy that's overachieving that I would love to sell if I had. I mean, I don't have this player anywhere, but for those of you that do have him, maybe it's time to consider moving on from Adrian Peterson. Okay?
Now,
you're potentially cashing in on an aging, overachieving running back who's well past his prime, but still, because of the first 7-8 weeks of this year, carries name value. I mean, we have to acknowledge that he carries name value.
but you're selling him at a week where he only scored you 4.8 points. That's not too high.
No, I think people can look past that. It was one game, but if you can get into conversation with somebody potentially who needs a running back, I think you could convince them into Adrian Peterson. 8 games, 771 yards, 5 touchdowns. He's been efficient at 4.5 a carry. I mean, this is a time to sell, to talk people into Adrian Peterson. Why I don't like him, I mean, his stats speak otherwise. Why I don't like him, the O-line in Washington is so completely banged up right now. Okay?
Yeah, no, they've been so hurt. Last season and this season, they've just had the worst injury bug I've ever seen on a team. Crazy.
It really has been, and you hate to see it, but right now, the Washington Redskins offensive line is missing left tackle Trent Williams, expected to miss 1 month with a thumb injury. Their left guard, Sean Luevo, torn ACL, is on the IR. Their center is out. He's one of the better centers in the league, out of 35 qualified centers. Their right guard, Brandon Sheriff, torn pec. He's on IR. And their right tackle, Morgan Moses, is out with a knee injury, questionable for Sunday. So this offensive line that has just bulldozed as much as they can for Adrian Peterson is banged up. They're bruised. Most of them are on IR. They're counting on second string players. So I don't like that. But I also don't like the potential return of Chris Thompson to what we know that he can be and what he has been at certain points in this season. I mean, if you take a banged up O-line and the potential return of Chris Thompson, and we've seen a little bit of Capri Bibbs mixed into the mix, he's emerged a tiny bit. I just think all these things adding up takes away from Adrian Peterson's ceiling. And so far, that's what he's given you, the ceiling. But I mean, come on. It's time to face facts with Adrian Peterson. It's just, this isn't going to continue.
Okay. All right.
I'm not counting on Adrian Peterson to win me any championships.
No.
But I think I could sell him in a package deal for something better.
Okay. I like that.
Yeah.
So here's an interesting guy you brought up is Deshaun Watson, who has been extremely efficient this past week, but this past few weeks, but he's on bye this week. So it might be tough to sell a quarterback on bye.
Maybe. I mean, you're not. I think Deshaun Watson, if I have another option, I'm going to try to sell him for anything I could start moving forward. But here's why, if you can get a deal done involving Deshaun Watson, here's why I don't think it's a bad idea. We saw Deshaun Watson at the beginning of the year. I didn't see him in this light, but a lot of you did. You saw Deshaun Watson as like the potential Michael Jordan of the fantasy football world. And because he just gave you straight fire for so many weeks and had this unbelievable record-setting pace, but we said it wasn't sustainable. And what you've seen so far this year is something that just wasn't sustainable. In week 5, he had a rib injury, and that's hurt his baseline because he hasn't been able to run the football as often and as efficiently as he would like to, right? Here's the numbers.
Ball as much either.
Well, or throw it, but here's the numbers on Deshaun Watson. Weeks 1 through 5, Deshaun Watson is averaging 38.5 pass attempts a game and almost 7 rushes per game. Okay, that's he's giving lots of volume in the passing game, gives you a boosted baseline with the rushing attempts. That's fantastic. Weeks 6 through 9, 23.3 pass attempts per game and only 4 rushing attempts per game. Right? His rushing attempts are like almost cut in half, and his pass attempts, are about 40% less than what they were before. So, I mean, all we're seeing right now from Deshaun Watson is a lot less volume coming from him in the passing game and the rushing game. Partly, I think, due to the rib injury that happened in week 5, because ribs are just a tough injury to deal with. You can't really heal them except for resting. But Houston has found success. They're now 5-3 heading into their bye week. They don't need Deshaun Watson to be what Deshaun Watson was last year because what they're doing right now is working. So, Deshaun Watson doesn't need to take on that workload anymore. And so I'm just, with his injury and the team's success, I'm concerned for his playoff performances and his fantasy outputs coming into those weeks where you're really, really going to need him.
Yeah, I feel you there. I was never big on Deshaun where he was being drafted, but he'd be a scary sell. But absolutely, if you have a decent quarterback as your backup, like a Carson Wentz or even a Big Ben who's a little bit banged up himself, if you can get an asset that you can start at another position, yeah, absolutely sell Watson if you can.
So listen, I've talked enough on some of these guys that I would potentially sell. You own Amari Cooper. We just saw him after a 2-week bye. Sucks that you had to go through that if you own Amari Cooper, but he played. If you started him, you were probably pretty happy. 8 targets, 5 receptions, 58 yards, and a touchdown. For Amari Cooper owners, this was a good game. This was great. Better than 1 for 1 or 5 for 2 or 3 for 1 that you've seen in the past. So would you sell Amari Cooper at this point? What's your game plan? What's your mindset with having Amari Cooper?
Amari Cooper is young.
Yes.
He was a first-round pick, and he was traded for a first-round pick.
Yes.
We saw that the Dallas Cowboys wanted to use him heavily.
Agreed.
They wanted to get him the ball. They don't want to look stupid for trading a first-round pick for a wide receiver like that. People made fun of Jerry Jones for trading a first-round pick for Amari Cooper, but they don't blink an eye when the Atlanta Falcons draft a 24-year-old wide receiver in the first round.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Makes sense. However, he is a trade high candidate. He's not going to ruin you like the old Amari Cooper. I do not believe he's gonna take a giant turd all over your fantasy team if you start him.
He's either going to win you a week or lose you a week. That's the bottom line.
That's what he was before.
Absolutely.
I don't think he's going to be that right now. But
Okay.
if you could trade him for above the value that he gave you.
Would you trade Amari Cooper for Cooper Kupp?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And
I would too.
And that's a great example because that is pure volume. That offense is absolute pure volume. Dak Prescott and that offense does not throw the football. He's thrown over 30 times, 3 times all season. Last night or on Monday night, he threw 31 times. 2 weeks before, he threw 35, and against Seattle, he threw 34. But that's not even a good mark. That's not a mark you want to go for. He's averaging in the mid to high 20s every game, and those numbers are not going to get it done. Amari Cooper needs to be a volume pass catcher.
Right.
He's a very talented guy, and until they actually fire their head coach or get a new offensive coordinator or decide if Dak Prescott is not the guy, it's quite possible that, like we talked about when Cooper was traded here, we can find out that Dak just can't make all those throws. He's not a volume guy. He's an inefficient Deshaun Watson.
No, I mean, you look at the situations that Amari Cooper came from and got himself into. I mean, when he was in Oakland, we all saw Derek Carr as, last year at some points we saw maybe MVP caliber performances for weeks on end. And then, we've seen him this year where he's just sort of had lackluster moments, and you've really questioned him and Gruden and that offense. But stats at the end of the day, Derek Carr averaging 274.8 yards per game. You scroll down the list to Dak Prescott. 33rd in the league in yards per game. That means a backup has come in and replaced him. That's CJ Beathard that's done that. Dak Prescott's only averaging 207.5 yards per game through the air. Right? He's finding himself in an offense now that he might be more involved on a more consistent basis. I get that with what you're saying. But the mentality in Dallas is still, let's run the football. And you should. You have a quarterback that's mobile. You have Ezekiel Elliott that is one of the best backs in the league who has struggled, albeit. But the Dallas offense speaks to run. And if you're only throwing the ball 200 potentially 200 yards per game, how many of them can go to Amari Cooper? Right?
Well, he's going to have an extremely large target share, and I don't see that really
and that's not going to happen. Right.
No.
So
Amari, the best part about Amari to some people is he still has that shine. He still has that first round. People remember from a few years ago where he had over 1,000 yards and was a breakout rookie. He broke out so young that that people still remember that. So
so I'm like, if I'm an Amari Cooper owner, which I'm not, but you are, I think I'm going to try to sell him. And Cooper Kupp is a great example. I would trade him. I would trade Cooper Kupp, Robert Woods for Amari Cooper in a heartbeat.
Yep. It felt like this week in our Dynasty League, I had to start Amari Cooper and Doug Baldwin. And in previous years, that felt great. You had 2 really good wide receivers. It didn't feel great this week.
No.
They ended up doing okay for me. I won a week and they did okay. And hopefully, and now with AJ Green down on that dynasty team, I'm a little bit struggling at a wide receiver, but either way, it's funny how things change so much. And I agree. If you could sell Amari Cooper high, do so while you still can.
I agree. Sell the hype on a new opportunity in Dallas, which we've just kind of outlined. That's maybe not a better situation. Sell the hype, sell the name before it's too late. I think you can get something a lot better in in the postseason if you're headed that direction.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
Okay, go ahead.
We're going to do a quick Thursday night preview. This is actually a really good game. You got the
Finally, man.
Carolina Panthers visiting the Pittsburgh Steelers at home. 51.5 over under, 3.5. Maybe I think I saw an updated 4-point over under in favor of the Steelers.
Mm-hmm.
Steelers really turned it around since their week 1 tie to Cleveland. And the Panthers are playing great. Is this kind of a start all your players kind of game?
Yeah, I think it's the exact opposite of the Thursday night preview we did for last week, where we said, I don't know who you start. It was just such a junky matchup that ended up being very lopsided. The 49ers ran away with it. We didn't foresee Nick Mullins doing what he did.
Yeah, Kittle's great. Kittle's
we
awesome.
We said the only guy worth starting in this matchup is Kittle, and he disappeared for a little bit with an injury, came back, had 105 yards receiving, was a stud. But in this matchup, I mean, play everybody.
So is there really anyone you wouldn't play? Let me go through some of the list here just from memory. Christian McCaffrey.
Yeah, of course. Let's not even waste our time. Yes.
Greg Olsen.
Absolutely.
Cam Newton.
Yes. Funchess. Yes. DJ Moore. Yes.
Oh, okay. Those were the other guys I was a little curious about. So
yes,
you obviously start James Conner, right? Do you start Vance McDonald?
Tough one for me.
That's a tough one.
I've stayed away from him all year. I'm not the best one to ask for that. I mean, you've had games at times, but last week we saw Jesse James get back in the mix. So
yeah. So maybe sit your Pittsburgh tight ends.
Maybe.
But you obviously start Juju and AB.
Of course.
James Washington is not a guy you want to start.
He is not a start for me.
Okay, that's fair. Do you see this game going over the 51.5 or under? Yeah,
no, for sure. It's going to be a thriller. Big Ben and Cam always like to have good matchups. Cam's been playing great as of late, and Carolina looked unstoppable last week, albeit a very poor team that they played. But I mean, they were up, 35-7, super fast.
Both defenses are playing decent, but you don't want to play either defense.
No, I mean, yeah, both defenses have been improving, have been doing a little bit better. Carolina's certainly come back and stolen a couple games in the fourth quarter on the back of their defense. Pittsburgh is kind of like New England. They're just that historic franchise that seems to be able to turn it around at the right moments. But I just think both of these offenses are too potent to keep any fantasy points, any scoring opportunities off the board. It was kind of like you look at the Rams and the Saints last week. It wasn't a question. I mean, the Rams defense is good, but the Saints offense is just so damn good. It might even be better than the Rams. It's just like you couldn't keep them off. It was like the first team that kicked a field goal was going to lose.
Yeah.
Right. So sometimes the offenses are just so good that the defensive matchups just don't matter.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that might be the case in this game. It'll just be a shootout.
Who do you have winning this matchup?
Whatever team gets the ball last. I mean, the resiliency of the Carolina Panthers lately lends me to think that they might be able to squeak out a win. But Pittsburgh's look great and they're at home. So I think I'm going to have to stick with the Steel here.
Yeah, I think I'm sticking with Steelers as well, my friend.
And I've got a lot of AB and Big Ben stacks, so I desperately need them to hook up a couple times.
I have 0 Antonio Brown stacks this year. So, doesn't really matter. I don't really have any Pittsburgh Steelers, actually, besides a couple shares of Big Ben. So, We shall see.
All right, Lando, take us away today, buddy.
All right, that'll do for us. Make sure to follow us on our Sleeper channel. Follow the link in our description and have yourself a good rest of your week. And we will see you on Saturday morning.
You're damn right. We're going to talk some trades. Again, just to mention, if you do have any trade questions for us, make sure to hit us up on social, Instagram, Twitter, and Sleeper. We'll be sure to give you our feedback. And if it's a question we can feature on the episode, we'd love to do that as well. We'll see you guys on Saturday, and we hope you enjoyed.
You got to give me one last chance to beat you at DK.
Yeah, you want another matchup?
Give me one more opportunity. I got to win.
Give the fans what they want.
All right, man. Talk to you later.
All right, we'll see you Saturday.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks for listening to another episode of the Saturday Morning Snap Fantasy Football Podcast. Follow us on Twitter at Mac_SMS and Landon_SMS. Support this independent podcast at patreon.com/SaturdayMorningSnap.